Hello, um, this is Matthew, and this is vlog number 6, I believe. So, for today's vlog, well, if anyone knows my channel, I have like a news and politics podcast. So I think a lot about news and politics. For this vlog, I just wanted to kind of give my overall thoughts and impressions on President Donald Trump, but also give my thoughts and impressions on my own thoughts and impressions in the last 5 years or so, because he is a weird president, needless to say, and there's a variety of opinion on, his actions and his place in American politics, and how much he's responsible for, how much he's not responsible for. Is he more of a symptom of the problem, or is he the problem? Questions like these, which aren't that easy to answer, but being the person that I am, I have what I think is at least a possible answer. And I guess I'll start maybe by talking about what I think I could have understood better about the whole situation. Because, and I don't mean to say this as a humble brag, although I guess it's going to sound like a humble brag regardless. I think I was pretty on the money when it comes to Trump and Trump's role in all this. But I think I had a tendency, at least for a while, or in bits and spurts, depending partly on who I was talking to, to underestimate the damage he could do, or underestimate his ability to truly disrupt the system in negative ways. But I think part of it has to do just with the fact that it seems like most people do either overestimate or underestimate both his the positive effects and the negative effects that he's had on American politics. But just to be clear, he's had an overwhelmingly negative impact from my perspective. The positive he's done is very minuscule compared to all the negative things he's done. So I guess what I got a little wrong, or the tendency that I had, again, especially when talking to a certain kind of people, a certain kind of person, especially when talking to to people of certain political leanings, I should say, I was I had a tendency to suggest that many people were more worried about him than they should be, or they should have been. Now, I think I perhaps took it a bit too far, or I used it in certain contexts when I shouldn't have. I think it was and is a legitimate position in the sense that he's not Hitler, he's not Mussolini, he hasn't destroyed democracy. He has had there have been a few things that I would say were, or he's done a few things which I would say are positive. He didn't sign the TPP into law. He attempted to get the U.S. to have better relations with Russia, and to a lesser extent, North Korea. His foreign policy's kind of been all over the place, but at least in the last several weeks or so, he's talked about decreasing the amount of troops in Afghanistan, which, if he follows through with, it would be a positive thing. He's not doing nearly enough, but it would be a positive action nevertheless. Sorry. But I guess it's really important to understand that I don't think he is or was as dangerous as many people claimed him to be. I don't think this election was necessarily an existential crisis. I don't think it would have been the end of the U.S. or the end of the world had he been reelected. In the sense that, at some level, I view Biden and Trump both as existential threats, although not to the same degree. And on top of that, I think at some level, certain people, especially many liberals, they see the Trump administration as a deviation from the norm. But it was only a deviation from the norm in a very specific sense or way. And by that I mean he governed basically like a typical Republican president, and even some of his policies would not have been or could have been done or enacted by certain Democratic presidents as well. A huge difference just was that he's an ass and he doesn't have a filter. So a huge difference, I suppose, between, say, Trump and Obama is just that Obama has this sense of decorum and grace and respectability that Trump doesn't have or doesn't care to have. But I guess I've come to think that I guess what I'm kind of struggling with, and this is partly my own fault, I'm not sure exactly where I was right and exactly where I was wrong, in the sense that I guess I could look through like some of the statements I made in my podcast, but other than that, there's really not a record of my statements that I can look back on. I think I've always acknowledged that Trump is not equivalent, or Hillary was not equivalent to Trump, or that Biden was not equivalent to Trump. But of course I wouldn't have voted for Hillary, and I didn't vote for Biden. And I guess the really striking thing about Trump is just that how willing he is to undermine institutions for his personal gain. And I think that's obvious. It was obvious from the get-go. But perhaps that was really what I underestimated to some degree. And again, I was underestimating him, or underestimating his responsibility as a reaction to people overestimating his responsibility. But and I say this as someone who has no friend of the system and thinks the system needs to be dismantled and we need to, get out a fresh sheet of paper and start all over. But I do think the way Trump has undermined the system is dangerous. And I guess it's dangerous in the sense that not only is he undermining perhaps the bad parts of the system, or at least he claims to, he's undermining a lot of the good things about the system. Again, I would say he really basically is perpetuating the bad things about the system and undermining most of the good things about the system. But I guess there's a little nuance there. It's just so... It's all very, it's a stupid thing to say perhaps, but it's all very complicated at some level. But it is, I don't know, I was listening to a podcast that Sam Harris did, and he was talking about how our institutions almost collapsed given how much Trump was undermining the electoral process. And at some level, I guess that's only hitting me now. At some level, it was I mean, I didn't think he would succeed at that, and I was right. But I suppose just perhaps the fact that he was trying to do that was, I didn't think enough about, or I wasn't paying enough attention to that fact. And that is perhaps the most chilling part of all this, because not only is he a buffoon, he's a malevolent buffoon. So you can't just say, oh, he's an idiot, don't listen to him. No, he's an idiot, but he's an idiot with bad intentions. And again, I think I probably wrote him off as more of an idiot and didn't fully consider his bad intentions. Again, I really wish I had like a lot of record to go back to. I don't know. I just felt I wanted to make this video because I wasn't sure if I had really given the strongest case I could, or I hadn't been as strident in my denunciation of him as I felt that I should be. And again, it's not even necessarily that I was wrong, but I was wrong. or rather, maybe another way to put it is, I was on the right track, but there were a few bugs in the system, a few kinks in my analysis that are just now, that I'm just kind of now realizing. I mean, I've never liked Donald Trump. I never will. I realized he was, I realized he was, bad news from the beginning. And I'm very thankful that we'll be rid of him, at least that he won't be president any longer come January. But I don't know. I think he kind of fooled a lot of people, honestly. He fooled a lot of people, but he fooled a lot of people in different ways and for different reasons, and most people didn't have... Oh, hold on. I don't know if that stopped the video. I was saying he fooled people in a lot of different ways, and there were just so many factors. There's so many aspects of the situation that even if you were perfectly objective about one part of it, you might not have been as objective about another part. And I guess that's kind of my diagnosis of my analysis of my analysis, and my analysis of other people's analysis. I think I was more objective than a lot of people were, but I was definitely, I definitely didn't get everything right. So yeah, and this gets into another conversation which I've had with different people, and I've had to varying degrees of success, but it's like questions about voting for the lesser of two evils, or questions about which political party is the more dangerous or the less dangerous. And I suppose I could give my own biases. I could tell you my own biases now. Maybe I shouldn't go this way. Might be too much traffic. I'm just walking outside. As you can see, no need to tell you that. I come from a family of committed Democrats. I am a registered Democrat. But I would call myself a reluctant, I'm a registered Democrat, but I'm very reluctant to be a registered Democrat, given how ineffective and destructive the Democratic Party is. But I think the Republican Party is even more destructive, and I'm not even sure it's much of a question. I think your average Democratic politician and your average Republican politician are distinct in some key ways. Not all elites are created equal. And even though they both want a world governed by neoliberalism, it's a different variety or shade of neoliberalism. And I think the Democrats are the closest thing we have to like a Labor Party or a Social Democratic Party or a Socialist Party or whatnot. Again, they're far. They don't ultimately they're not ultimately a Labor Party or a Social Democratic Party or a Socialist Party. They fall well below the mark. They don't pass the test. But I don't know. It's almost like I'd give the Republicans an F-, and I would give the Democrats maybe a D+ or a C-. But so to connect this, of course, back to Trump. I do have to say, I think this is still justifiable. I think this is still a justifiable thing to say, even in retrospect. In the 2016 election, I can understand and empathize with why someone would have voted for Donald Trump. Again, I think they're wrong. I think they were wrong to think he was going to shake up the system. I think they were wrong to think he was going to drain the swamp. I think they were wrong to think that he was truly populist. But given who Hillary Clinton was, even though I think she was by far the better candidate, given who Hillary Clinton was and given her history, I can understand why somebody would have voted for Trump and thought that was the right thing to do. I think it was a mistaken calculation, but I understand the reasoning behind the mistaken calculation. And I understand why I can understand the mistake, and to some extent even justify it. At least from the perspective of how terrible this neoliberal corporatist system is, and the extent to which the Democrats are responsible for that. Complicit, how much the Democrats are complicit in this neoliberal corporatist system. But in 2020, I'm losing, or I've lost, my ability to empathize and understand with voting for Trump. Given how he's governed over the last 4 years, given his behavior, given the policies he's enacted, I don't think I could never. I mean, I wouldn't have voted for him in 2016, but I would have been far more likely to vote for him in 2016 than in 2020. Of course, I wasn't old enough to vote in 2016, and I was old enough to vote in 2020. But I just don't think the reasons that someone could have given for voting for Trump in 2016, I don't think those reasons hold in 2020, because he was given a chance. He was elected president. He was given a chance to follow through with the promises, to follow through with his promises in 2016, and he didn't. He governed like almost indistinguishably from a typical Republican president. Again, a few exceptions aside. And so, given that, I think it is now basically an objective fact that he was a fraud, and that if you voted for him in 2020, you are voting for an obvious fraud. And even though I didn't vote for Biden, I don't think Biden and Trump are equally evil or equally bad or equally destructive. And, I don't know what this is I don't know what Trump's presidency, I don't know the ramifications that are going to happen. I don't know if, the GOP basically is going to split into two parties, or if the GOP is going to be destroyed by like a Trumpist party or a party modeled on Trump's, I guess, worldview, which he doesn't really have, mind you. Or if it's just going to be business as usual, regular Democrats and more regular Republicans. Or will there be more, or will certain people begin to act in an irrational and violent manner because they didn't get their way? All of that's unclear. And I understand, believe me, I understand if someone's a little disappointed in a Biden presidency. I do understand that. I am disappointed in a Biden presidency. That's why I didn't vote for Joe Biden. he disappoints me in the sense that he is not a progressive. He's not going to fight for progressive. Um, he is not going to get progressive legislation passed. He is just another. He is just another typical Democratic politician, another typical Democrat, as he likes to say himself. He's a centrist Democrat. So I do sympathize with the people who are like, oh my God, it's a Biden presidency. This is awful. So this is not me like defending Joe Biden or defending Kamala Harris. Again, both terrible candidates, and I will be the first to criticize them when they are doing terrible things, which they are bound to do. But I just want to make clear that it doesn't mean you're a social justice warrior. It doesn't mean you're insane. It doesn't mean you're losing all sense of proportion. If you acknowledge that how terrible Trump's presidency has been, he should be locked away in a jail cell, in a prison cell, for the rest of his life, if it were up to me. Which, of course, it's not. I'm not dictator of the universe, nor do I want to be. But he should be locked away for the rest of his life. If for no other reason than the destruction he has tried to inflict on our institutions. Now, did he break? Like, of course, there's a moral question. There's a legal question, and I'm not a legal scholar, so it's harder for me to build like a legal case for that. Of course, so maybe it's just a question of completely forgetting about the man, or attempting to forget about the man. Let his family just exist. Don't engage. Well, I mean, don't like shed spotlight on them. Just let them, let them be. But don't, don't go, donate the money and don't buy their books and don't watch their speeches and just pretend they're not there. And that might be all that we have. And that might be all we're able to do in this situation. Perhaps he didn't. Perhaps the damage he did was not something that can quite be prosecuted legally. And of course, I mean, some of the damage he did was damage done by previous presidents. So not all the sins of his presidency can be put at his feet. They're just put at the feet of what the presidency has become. That includes Bill Clinton, that includes Bill Clinton, both Bushes, Obama, Jimmy Carter, etc. I don't know. I hope this video has made sense. I've just kind of been rambling. But I wanted to get this out there. I felt like I would feel better if I just got my thoughts out there about the whole thing. This isn't even, I mean, I could really talk about this for an hour. Maybe I should. But I guess I'll probably just, it's been half an hour. I think I'll just let my statements, the statements that I've made stand as their own, as a self-contained unit, as its own video. I wanted to, I felt like I had maybe, again, if it's not correct to say I got it wrong, I at least didn't understand the full picture. And I think it was important to acknowledge what I think I've learned, or the realizations I've come to recently. And I just hope that perhaps we can learn from this, from what happened, in order to actually get the policies that the American people overwhelmingly want or deserve. I hope there's a silver lining to this. It's probably too early to say if there is or not. It's unfortunate we had to learn this the hard way. I mean, the pandemic itself is, I think, proof of the ineptitude and incompetence and malevolence, I keep coming back to that word, malevolence, of Donald Trump. I mean, we have recordings. He said he's trying to he's trying to downplay the pandemic. He doesn't want people panicking. He doesn't want people upset or anxious. He's trying to downplay. He was trying to downplay the pandemic. In mostly to try to focus on getting reelected. He didn't want it to make him look bad, basically. But then, of course, people can't even agree on whether, whether the amount of people dead from the coronavirus, whether it's like, whether that's a horrible number, or whether it's, the best we could do. Like there are some people who would basically say, like, well, I mean, one death is too many, but given all our factors, we've actually done quite well. But then there are people that are like, no, this is horrible. We've done awful. And we can't even agree on that. And that's partly Trump. Of course, that's getting into, like, fake news and, the post-truth politics, or whatever you want to call it. And of course, that's not, you can't completely blame Trump for that. But I think you can partly blame Trump for perpetuating and continuing. You can blame him for spouting misinformation. You can blame him for playing, the game of post-truth politics. You can blame him for sowing the seeds of you can blame him for sowing the seeds of division. Again, of course, I would say he is more of a symptom of the problem than the whole problem, but he has become a problem in and of himself. Even though that there are problems far beyond him that our society is that the U.S. The United States is. There are problems far beyond him that the United States is dealing with. There are problems that the U.S. is dealing with that are far beyond Trump. But he has not been. He has not helped the situation. He has made the situation worse. Overwhelmingly. And it's just crazy. I mean, it's insane at some level. I wasn't surprised that he was elected. But man, I am ashamed of my country at some level. And again, I understand why the mistake was made, but that doesn't take away from the fact that it was a mistake. And I know people would disagree. There were many, many people, about half the country perhaps, that would disagree with me that it was a mistake. And they would say, no, everything you're saying is wrong. Everything you're saying is a mistake. But I don't think they're right, or I would be spouting their talking points. I mean, I don't even think I'm spouting talking points. I think I'm trying to look at this as objectively as possible, and I think I'm trying to go, I think I'm trying to, get to the heart of the matter and not just spout talking points. I don't know. I'm only 21. I don't have all the answers. I mean, I'll never have all the answers, even if I live to be 100, but I think I can diagnose the problem, but I don't think I can offer too many solutions. I didn't... At some level, the Democrats are our only option for improving the system bit by bit until we can construct a new system. But that's in some ways an uphill battle, and it's very hard to get the Democrats to budge on certain things. I think we can to a degree, but it's not near enough. It's not near what we need. If I lived in swing states in this year, if I lived in a swing state, I would have voted for Biden. If I had lived in a swing state and been old enough to vote in 2016, I would have voted for Hillary. I do think the lesser of two evils argument is a legitimate argument to have, or a legitimate reason to vote for the lesser of two evils, at least in the swing states. Although you are voting for evil. I guess, popular just activism and getting out there and protesting and getting your voice out there. That's something we can do. And I don't do much of that. Or no, I don't do any of that, really. I've never been to a protest. I've never really done any direct action or popular activism. I stay in my own little world, basically, which is probably not morally defensible, but I do. And I guess part of that someone might say is to do with privilege, or part of that just has to do with my own idiosyncrasies, worries about run-ins with the cops, or I'm not a big fan of crowds. But so it's hard for me to really know what we should do, what we can do, because even though I'm thrilled to get Trump out of office, that's just the first step, and first steps are important. You can't take any other step before you take the first step, but then we have to take the second one, and the third, and the fourth, and the fifth, and so on. And I hope we can figure out what those steps are so we can do them. I've never lived anywhere else except the United States. So, if maybe eventually I'll travel the world and be like, oh, I want to live in this country. I don't want to live in the U.S. anymore. But I've lived in the U.S. my whole life. I've lived in one state for about 20 years, and I lived in the other state for a year, give or take. So I've only experienced even a small, and I've traveled to a few different states, but I've only experienced a small fraction of the United States itself. But I guess I bring all this up just to say that I have a special place in my heart for the United States. And that's not something I can defend rationally. I'm not going to have a rational argument about patriotism or nationalism and whatnot. Well, I'm anti-nationalist, but I'm not even going to have a philosophical discussion where I'm going to defend patriotism or something. It's just an irrational, emotional, subjective thing that I experience, a attachment to my birth country. And I don't want to see, I don't want to see the U.S. collapse. I don't want to see anything bad happen to the United States. Nothing lasts forever. So I don't expect the U.S. to last forever. But I don't want I don't want the American experiment to come to an end anytime soon. No matter no matter how much the American experiment has devolved and mutated into something that is in many ways indefensible. I think there's still something. I think we can, get to a point in this country where we are far better off than we are now, and far better off than we've ever been. I don't think that's out of the question whatsoever. But I think it's going to take a lot of work. And again, the path is unclear. The path to get to where we want to get is unclear, and even the path where we want to get to is a bit unclear. But I'm truly am now I'm going on a slightly different tangent when this whole video is supposed to be sort of my final thoughts on Donald Trump, although I'm sure I'll have more thoughts and keep adding to the pile. Unfortunately, this guy lives in my head rent-free, and he has done it for the past 5 years or so. So yeah, I'm going to wrap up this video. I don't expect people to even watch this video, or watch it all the way through. But if you did, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I hope I made some sense. I was just kind of getting my thoughts out there, just rambling with no real... I had some thoughts and ideas of what I wanted to say, but I didn't put them in a very... I didn't, put them in any... I didn't give any structure to my thoughts. I just dumped it all out. I just put it all out in this one video, or most of it in this one video, just to see, just because I felt I needed to. So, thank you for listening, or thank you for watching, or listening, and listening. Thank you for watching and listening. Happy holidays, and take care.